The caterhamracer.com Academy Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights for the Caterham 7. Well, good evening again, everybody, and welcome back to Oulton Park for more action from caterhamracer.com, this time for the smaller and least powerful cars on the grid, being the Caterham Academy machines. We had the 420Rs this time last week to start off their first championship rounds. Now it is the Academy drivers' turn, most of them returning from the 420Rs, so many familiar faces I'm sure you'll be seeing all the way throughout tonight's action. Scott Woodwiss here, hopefully sounding a lot clearer, thanks to the very generosity of my co-commentator Chris Hutchinson, who very kindly lent me a spare microphone he had for the duration of the season and perhaps beyond. But it's after the action that we had for the 420Rs, Chris, of course, last week. It's nice to see the Academy guys back out, and particularly for some drivers, they'll be using it as a practice for this weekend's upcoming opening Academy rounds at Oulton Park on Saturday, which are going to be live streamed online on Facebook and YouTube, with yours truly on comments for those as well. And these drivers will certainly be getting into the swing of things, while some of them will also use it as a little bit of an extra warm-up ahead of their debuts at Cadwell Park. But either way, it should be hopefully just as entertaining racing in the Academy cars as we did in the 420Rs, and it usually is on both occasions.
Yeah, I love the Academy cars in real life and in the simulator world. They've produced some absolutely epic racing throughout the last season, and I am expecting very much more of the same. The pace is absolutely fast and frantic. Pre-qualifying happened yesterday, and last time out in the season one we had 4 people that were in the 159s, and this time out we've had I think it's about 7 drivers that were in the 159s, so 8 drivers in the 159s. So the pace has increased. But yeah, just as fast and frantic. Like you say, there's a couple of Academy guys actually on the grid racing around here, and they will be out on track at Oulton Park this very weekend. So yeah, I bet they are getting excited.
I think we're getting excited as well, because the Academy cars, as you say, do tend to put on quite a fantastic show whenever they race online, particularly even in some cases more so than the 420Rs, if you can believe that. We're into the qualifying session, so everyone's out there trying to set the fastest lap possible. Here's one of the potential men that could take provisional pole position and could even take a race victory tonight. It's double Caterham champion James Murphy. He's been an Academy champion and then just a Rotorsport champion back in 2018. In the last season, he was sort of floundering a little bit in 270Rs, but did find his groove in the second half of the season. And we've talked about him a few times, Chris, is that he's a driver where this might be a bit of a thing which comes throughout the season, as it did in season 1. There's no denying his pace. He is indeed very quick, but he does tend to be, and the common word we use is, a little bit over-enthusiastic when it comes to making moves or throwing the car into a corner, and therefore sometimes, whilst he does score good results most of the time, other times he tends to let the car go a little bit too much than he, and I guess we would like watching the racing, and therefore some results he could be picking up tend to fall by the wayside because of 1 or 2 silly mistakes that he tends to make.
Unfortunately, we never got to see what he is capable of now that he's had another season under his belt and has had a bit more practice. Last time out, he and Will Rossetti had a little bit of a coming together, and that then meant that he was sort of trailing around near towards the back of the field. He did make his way back through in race 2, but we definitely never got to see the true potential that he's got. And maybe tonight, as he's abusing track limits massively there, but yeah, maybe tonight we can actually see something out there. And certainly from pre-qualifying, he's got some pace back, so it's great to see.
Well, the man who's currently got the pace at the moment is the man that won both races in the 420R Championship last week, and it's this man right here, Steve Mcmaster, who is set to, as far as I'm aware, looking at the entry lists for this coming weekend, compete in, I think possibly the Academy, maybe the Green Group this weekend.
No, Mcmaster is having a season off actually from racing. He's going to try and get his rally licence this year. But yeah, he's not an Academy driver, but he's certainly showing pace. I'm sure if he was in the Academy, he'd be dominating there.
Do you know what? I got it confused with another driver that probably had the same sort of setup of name or something. But anyway, talking about Steve, of course, he went out in the 420Rs last week and almost practically blew away the competition, took both race wins. It was practically a perfect evening start off the season. He's now taking provisional pole at the moment, although we've still got roughly half a session to go, by just under 600ths of a second from Will Rossetti. Are we expecting the same again from Steve, or do we think that because it's the Academy cars with less grip and more mechanical sort of grip to have to deal with, it's going to be tougher for him to try and win? Or do we think that maybe if he's able to master the 420R, he might be able to do the same again as he has done in the past with the Academy car and get to grips with it pretty quickly enough and quick enough to be able to blow the field away again tonight?
I think his consistency and his ability to sort of make decisive moves, I think that's going to see him in good stead. In race 1, he did walk away with it, but we did have quite a sizable accident for the field, which kind of meant that he did get to run away. In race 2, he got stuck in and made good moves, so I am expecting to see more of the same. But you say, the challenge is different in the Academy car. The dynamics of the car are different. And very much more about momentum and maintenance of that when you don't have quite so much grip. So a little bit more finesse sometimes into the corners to make that work. You can't just use brute force to get out the corner as well.
Yeah, the Caterham Academy car is very much a different beast to the 420R machine. In terms of comparison, the Academy cars have a 1.6 litre 4 Sigma engine. They have road legal Avon Academy spec tyres. They have sort of road and race spec suspension, which the cars run as well. They have a 5-speed manual gearbox and about 125 brake horsepower. You then compare that to the 420R that has a 2-litre Ford Duratec. It has more dedicated tyres, dedicated brakes, suspension, a sequential gearbox, and a bit more horsepower under the hood as well. And of course, they've been upgraded to UK status this season, so they're now called the 7 UK Championship. They're two very different beasts. And I think what's interesting, Chris, is we see the drivers here who are able to adapt to both, whether it's cars back the slower, less grippy Academy car or the full-on thoroughbred 420R machine. I think that's telling from some drivers who in real life have raced both of those sorts of specs of cars throughout their Caterham racing career. Guys like, at the moment, almost Will Rossetti, Christian Zaruta most certainly has, James Murphy has kind of got to that level as well, and of course Steve Mcmaster, who's raced in championships like Sigmax and Grads and in Classics as well. So these guys who are very well versed in racing Caterhams in real life, and therefore adapting back and forth between the two specs seems to be easier than some drivers are finding, do you think?
Yeah, and you know, simulator driving is getting closer and closer to the real thing. So, people who've had that experience and know what they're looking for in real life can then, attach those same dynamics to the simulator world and really move on. We're watching here Rob Oldland, who is entered into the Academy this year. He has a YouTube channel, which I would encourage people to search out. He's all talking himself through this year and what he's up to. He's trying to do the Academy on a budget and explaining how that's all working as we see him actually leave the track there. So let's go and see someone else. But he will be looking forward, I'm sure, to this weekend. I'm sure the nerves are starting to kick in. He fought extremely hard to get onto this A grid through the week. As we see someone else going even wider, that'll be a cut, so that lap won't count for the driver. So he fought very hard to get onto this A grid and did a brilliant job to get here.
Yeah, I think I read on his profile of all the different driver profiles that got sent through to me earlier on this week about Rob Oldland. I think he's, in terms of real life, a road car. I think he's now owns 4 different Caterhams now, including his Academy car, before he decided to take the plunge and head onto the racetrack for real and become a racing driver. So he's certainly well versed in driving Caterhams, and some tend to be that come through from driving a road Academy car onto the circuits, but others tend to go in fresh from racing, I don't know, possibly doing something else with this, arrive and drive karting or being involved in motorsport in a different way. So different routes in and different pathways. Looking at the times though, I'm very impressed by the fact that of the 16 car grid that we've got at the moment, the top 13 drivers are covered by, you can even class 14 drivers are covered by just over a second. In fact, looking at it, top 7 cars separated by a fraction over 4/10, which just does suggest to me, Chris, that when we get racing, pace-wise, it's going to be very close. And I don't think anyone's going to be pulling away too quickly and having an advantage unless we have a 420R style start like we did in race 1, where everyone comes together in the midfield. I think if everyone gets clean to the first couple of laps, it's going to be quite a skirmish at the front between hopefully the top 5, 6, 7 cars. And as you say, it could be an even more entertaining race than we got in the 420Rs last week.
I'm very hopeful. As ever I am. I expect the worst, but I'm looking forward to the best. And I'm just focusing in here on Journey, who does move up to 5th place with that. We're down to 3 minutes to go in this qualifying session now. So we're getting to the real, it's do it now or you're going to be at the back of the grid. But like you say, everyone is pulling it out of the bag. We've got some really good times going in. David Rowe just moving up there to 6th place. Matt Shepherd improving his time but not his position in 11th there. All these drivers, trying really hard, and they're going to be down to their sort of maybe 1-2 more chances now before the end of this qualifying session.
So, as we say, 2.5 minutes to go in the session. Steve Mcmaster has provisional pole by just over 1/10 of a second from James Murphy. Will Rossetti, who was a championship contender in the road sport title last year in real life, is up there in 3rd as we ride on board with David Rowe looking down the bonnet of his Caterham Academy car as he swings through Island Bend. He'll hit the brakes in a straight line and dip into Shell Oils. It's one of my favourite corners in motorsport. It's a really long banked 180-degree corner. You sort of hug the apex and then fire it out the other side on the exit the corner, and it sets you off for the first of the two chicanes. David Rowe's currently 6th behind Jaroslav Cherny, our Czech driver who also sorted out all the physics on these cars when the mod was originally put out for Assetto Corsa, and also then just ahead of him is frequent title contender in the past Christian Zaruta, who has been quite prominent during lockdown in esports championships and has decided to try his hand at the esports and the form of racing he's most familiar in, which is Caterham racing, and certainly taking to it in the what I call the Brawn GP special, because, well, if you know Formula 1 and know the colour schemes, you only have to look at Christian Zaruta's car to know exactly where that's been inspired from. David Rowe 6th, as we said. Guy Crawford, who's been getting quicker and quicker, particularly in the first season. He's not a Caterham racer himself, but he owns a Caterham, and getting quicker and quicker on the sim in particular, and finding a groove which seems to be serving him well, as he's currently 7th fastest. Then we have one of our new drivers, which I think is Richard Gallagher.
Yeah, that's correct.
We didn't have too much about him. We know he's got a bright blue car, and he's qualified in 8th position. Chris Skillicorn is 9th, who I know is doing the Caterham Academy this year. And Paul Fernerhuff, who's another of our sim drivers, who is currently sat in 10th position. Christian Zaruta actually has just popped up to 2nd fastest, and then James Murphy's gone quickest to one of his final laps of the session. So 1 minute 59.446 has given James Murphy, who's just there in the shot with the black and orange Caterham. He's gone to fastest, but only by 12 thousandths of a second from Steve Mcmaster's time, and then Christian Zaruta, who's a further 800ths back. So the top 3 cars covered by less than a tenth of a second, and with 30 seconds to go, I imagine, Chris, this is how the order's going to be set, but looking at how close it is, this could get tasty on the first couple of laps, I'm pretty sure.
They will have the opportunity to finish this lap, so this will be their last chance saloon now. As you say, the gaps are so tight, I'm sure some of them will throw it. This is a really fast-moving trio, and with Christian Zaruta followed by James Murphy and then followed by David Rowe. David Rowe's probably the one that I would say is underperformed so far. He is only 3/10 off, but down in 6th place, and given pre-qualifying, I'd expect him to be fighting a bit higher than that.
So, looking as the checkered flag does indeed go out on the session, we're just waiting to see who can put in any quicker lap times. See David Rowe just been given the track position there as he's on his flying lap by current provisional pole sitter James Murphy. So he heads his way through the Hislop chicane, then led through the right-hander of Knickerbrook, and then under the bridge at Clay Hill towards the end of the lap. We'll see if he can improve. He's currently sat at the moment 6th quickest. He's just under 3.5 tenths off the pole times. That's round about roughly a 1 minute 59.7, 59.8. And Christian Zaruta is definitely not going quicker because he was going sideways through the shot there into Druid's back, going off into the gravel trap at Druid. So Christian Zaruta's qualifying session has come to an abrupt halt, and he won't start any higher than 3rd place. But let's see if maybe David Rowe can displace him here as he comes into Lodge Corner for the final time in the qualifying session. Wheels his number 3 car out over the rumble strips, under the bridge over Deer Leap, and up to the start and finish line. He's got 159.4 to beat, and can he do that? The answer is no, he can't. He stays 6th, doesn't improve his time, and remains on the 3rd row of the grid alongside Jaroslav Cherny. We've got Matt Shepherd here, who was a regular racer in the 270R Championship last year and has been coming up through the Academy ranks over the last couple of seasons, but he's abandoning his lap. He darts into pit lane. Here's Steve Arnell, one of his more artistic liveries on the grid. Makes his way over the crest, and he's got to try and improve from what is currently 12th place on the grid. He's less than a second off pole. Across the line he goes, and he stays 12th, but doesn't improve his time. So he stays exactly where he is, set to start on row 6. So as we get set to head into the first of our 2 15-minute races, this is how the grid is set to line up. And it's James Murphy with one of his final flying laps with a mega last sector to put himself on pole position, and he sets the time which puts him top by 12 1/1000ths of a second from Steve Mcmaster in P2. Then we go to Christian Zaruta, 3rd fastest, ahead of Will Rossetti in 4th, then Jaroslav Cherny in 5th to round out the top 5 with the fastest middle sector of the session. David Rowe, 6th quickest, and he'll start ahead of Guy Crawford and Richard Gallagher in one of his first races in the caterhamracer.com Academy Championship in 8th. Then it's Paul Fernerhuff and Chris Skillicorn who round out the top 10. Chris Skillicorn looking to impress on one of his last few sim races ahead of his Real World Academy debut. Matt Shepherd, 11th fastest, ahead of Steve Arnell in 12th, and Andrew Parker, another debutant in the series. He will start in 13th in his grey and purple machine. He starts alongside a 270R, or at least someone who's been experienced in Academy and road sport the last couple of seasons, Blair McConaughey. He's been quick on his day. Then it's Andy Steele and Rob Oldland to round out the 16 cars that are going to be competing here tonight. So I know we've already talked about it, but going into our first race, I have to admit that looking at the times, looking how close it's been, particularly in the top 10, if that's the pace that drivers are going to be setting all the way through tonight, it's going to be incredibly mixed up, and there's going to be quite a lot of traffic, I imagine, for not just the podium or the top 5, but even the top 10 positions. And I imagine unless someone sort of pulls the cork and lets everyone else out the bag and spinning off the road from incidents in the midfield, it's probably going to be a very compacted first few laps if everyone can get through trouble-free. So I anticipate it's going to be quite the skirmish, hopefully not too active, but hopefully quite the battle between these guys at the front in the top 10, battling for positions over this first 15-minute race of the evening.
Sometimes the slightly slower speed of these cars gives you a bit more forgiveness. If you make a slight mistake, you're carrying less speed, you have less momentum, things can sort of resolve themselves a little bit more straightforwardly. So I never like to predict what they're going to do on this opening lap, because I do saying it is really complicated and difficult to race in real life and in the simulator. The simulator, you don't have quite so many sort of feedbacks, like you would in real life about what's going on around you. So it's difficult to do all this, and accidents do happen. But I am hopeful that we're going to see some epic racing tonight.
There might be the yellow squares with the black crosses on the back, but for the majority of this field, they are far from novices, both in the real world and in the sim. And so this is going to be quite an exciting prospect to watch all 16 cars tear off the line towards Old Hall Corner. Of course, the next generation of Academy drivers will do that this weekend on Saturday afternoon. But it's James Murphy, two-time Caterham champion, on the left, alongside Steve Mcmaster, points leader and double winner from the 420Rs just a week ago. But it's a different spec of Caterham, but the competition is just as fierce. Watch out for Christian Zaruta in the Brawn GP Special, the white, black and fluorescent yellow on the left on row 2. And also watch out for Will Rossetti in his golf-coloured blue and orange Caterham. Here come the lights. The first race of the championship for the caterhamracer.com Academy Series is about to get underway. Who's going to pick up the first points of this second season, the first as a championship? Red lights on for race number 1 here at Oulton Park. Red lights go out now, and we're underway, and Christian Zaruta almost doesn't move, and Jaroslav Sheny has to move out of the way to avoid making contact. So a sluggish start for Christian Zaruta, who probably wasn't concentrating on the lights, but into turn 1 they go for the first time, and already Rossetti's been tagged by Journey. Round goes Rossetti, doesn't keep it off the barriers. Around also I think has gone David Rowe. So what's new there, because David Rowe always seems to get caught up in some kind of bother in the first couple of laps, and so yet again he's going to have to try and climb back up through the field from an adverse position. And he had a cascade for the first time though, and the top 2 have broken away. It is Murphy who is in trouble free in the lead, front row partner Mcmaster in second place, then Cherney in third, who did tag Rossetti, who sent him spinning at the exit of turn 1, and he's under threat from the recovering Zaruta, who seems to have woken himself up. But not quite the starts we were hoping for, at least for both Rossetti and also for David Rowe. They've both got to try and pick their way through for the back of the field, Chris. The leaders are already charging towards Hess Britons for the first time. It's Murphy in the lead with Mcmaster chasing after, but a big battle for third. But not quite the trouble-free start we were hoping for lap 1 so far.
No, and it looks like everybody wants to be in third place at the moment, doesn't it? So it looked like Cherney just had outbraked himself and hit the back of Rossetti. Again, this is the second race in a row he's had an unfortunate start to the race. I'm sure he'll be looking to get better. We see Christian here now trying to recover back through after he got through that gap without too much problem. Everyone is still in line, and as we said last time, damage is actually turned off, so they should be able to rejoin the race and fight back through.
So the leaders making their way up through Druids for the first time. Murphy still leading the way with Mcmaster on his tail by about 3/4 of a second, and then there's a small gap back to Cherney in third, ahead of Zaruta in 4th position. Guy Crawford up to 5th position in the orange and black Caterham. Look at him, he was someone who, a bit of a silent assassin in the first series. He never really he wasn't like a prominent front runner. I don't mean that disingenuously, but he was someone who always was able to keep himself out of trouble and pick his way through the field and pick up a third place or a fourth or a fifth place. In doing so, just keeping his nose clean and keeping out of trouble whilst others lost their heads. And that's a key skill, particularly in Caterham racing, to keep a patient head and to be able to keep it on the road when others aren't able to do that. Sixth place on his first race tonight for Richard Gallagher. Good effort for him so far in the pale blue car in sixth position, as Zaruta makes a dive for third inside at Cascades. And the number 2 car slots past the 0-1 into what is now third position, and Cherney will try and get him back. The Czech driver who's taken a couple of wins both at 420R and Academy level. And he was the man who designed and put together the physics for these Academy cars when he was working on them to make them extra realistic. He's been doing more work thanks to all the feedback from all the Caterham drivers we've had, and he's making these cars as close to the real thing as possible, and that will certainly at least help the Academy drivers that are debuting in 2020, using this car as a prime training tool ahead of their debut this coming weekend. So the leaders up through Britain chicane for the second time, and it's still Murphy from Mcmaster giving chase. Now it's third place for Zaruta. Cherney's been dropped to, I thought it was fifth position, but it is now fourth for Cherney. On board with Guy Crawford, is chasing the slipstream, and then Gallagher, Fernerhuff, Skillicorn, Shepherd and McConaughey, whilst at the moment, towards the back of the field, Rossetti and Rowe are recovering now in 12th and 13th place, Chris, but still quite a long way to go with 11.5 minutes in this first race.
Yeah, what we saw last week and actually last season. So just to go back to Guy Crawford, he's very much, like you say, he's not always there right at the beginning of the race, but he's always there at the end, and that is the sign of a really good racer, to always be up there. And I think he has had some podiums, so just that consistency and just being able to turn in lap after lap and have good racecraft is so important. So that's one to watch. But last week and last season we saw how the Academy cars in particular, overtake moves rarely go on just for one corner. They will go on for multiple corners, because as soon as you go side by side, you let the other people catch up from behind, and you know the speed is reduced even further. So let's just like now, even though Christian got past turn 1 last lap, he has not managed to make a break at all, and it looks like this battle is going to be race long. As out front, we're also seeing Mcmaster's caught up with James Murphy and maybe is starting to put him under pressure.
Yeah, fastest lap of the race set by Mcmaster there at the end of that second lap. It was the first proper flying lap for the cars as they completed that, as they head out now, exiting Cascades and down Lakeside for the third time. And Zaruta in third place is getting very defensive now, having to hold off another attack from Cherney. And Cherney's almost like a dedicated sort of little terrier trying to hold on to the outside of Zaruta, trying to make a move and not really giving it up. And now this gives a chance for Guy Crawford to get into the mix. And he's also bringing Richard Gallagher with him, and Cherney gets a little bit edged out wide on the exit through Shell Oils. He's been loosened up a little bit by Guy Crawford, and Guy trying to get his elbows out here and show his prominence, as the top two have now gone nose to tail as Mcmaster continues to chase after him in the lead. Out of Britain chicane now for the third time, hopping over the curbs goes Cherney, and a little bit of a sneaky exit there from Richard Gallagher is now going to put him alongside Guy Crawford. And also look at Paul Fernerhuff as well. He's been a little bit quiet in this first race, but he's in the mix in 7th place. Around the outside goes Gallagher for 6th. He goes over the curb. He can hold on to that. It's a very impressive one. And out wide goes Guy Crawford. He makes contact with Fernerhuff, and round goes both looks like Guy Crawford and also Richard Gallagher. So it was slightly off camera, but I think potentially, Chris, there was a bit of contact after the initial move there from Gallagher trying to go around the outside. We'll go back to that in a second, because there was side-by-side action there between Skillicorn and Fernerhuff for 4th and 5th, and Zaruta's running wide, just drifting towards the exit of Lodge Corner on the outside line, and now under threat from Cherney again. And Cherney's forcing the issue. He's gone right to the edge of the circuit, and Zaruta will try and squeeze him towards the apex of Lodge Corner. He tries to go around the outside, and Zaruta's done this before in real-life Caterham racing, using all of his experience here and the DPR machine, and holds on for the time being in third place. But as Cherney continues to attack, it just seems as though possibly going back to the incident between Gallagher and Crawford, I think 2-1 just didn't quite go after the initial move. I commend Gallagher for the effort. I think Crawford was possibly just getting his elbows out a little bit too much, and the two came together in the worst possible spot.
I think there was a third factor in that, and I think it might be Paul Fernerhuff, so we'll watch back after the stream's all finished. But I think actually where those two were going obviously slowly side by side, the chasing pack as ever didn't really have anywhere to go, and I think there was some gentle contact which then sort of did a chain reaction, which is not unheard of, as we see Cherney back up the inside of Ireland. Christian being absolutely stubborn though with his car placement, holding on in all the places that you don't want him to be. He's very dogged like that. In real life I can attest to as well.
Yeah, obviously Chris being a seasoned Caterham racer himself, he's gone up against Christian many times, particularly in the likes of the Super Sports and 310Rs, of course. So I think Chris almost knows Christian's tactics inside out in many cases, and I can test for that watching him. Christian's certainly a determined driver. He will not give up a position unless he absolutely has to and has no choice. He stayed in third place in the background, you can see, just ahead of the bright red Caterham of Jaroslav Cherny. We go back to our race leaders here, and so we're just coming up to half distance in this first of two races, and so far it looks to me as if James Murphy has been able to keep Steve Mcmaster at bay. That's not to say that Mcmaster's hasn't got anything up his sleeve. We go backwards to the battle for 5th and 6th position. Chris Skillicorn has got past Paul Fernerhuff. Now they're both coming under threat from a charging Matt Shepherd and Blair McConaughey. So Matt Shepherd in the yellow car with the black stripes, and just behind him is the white and black Caterham of Blair McConaughey. There he is, just in 8th position. Andy Steele in 9th. And Will Rossetti, who has climbed back up into the top 10. And just in the background, who's he bringing for company? David Rowe. So he's in the mix there too. Richard Gallagher is also in the pit lane. That must be as a result of what happened with his incident with Guy Crawford. There is damage off for these cars, but even so, he might have come back to the pits to maybe look back at his setup, or maybe call it a race for this first one at least. Our two cars that are recovering after their spins on the opening lap are setting a decent enough pace, and I think they can just claw up a little bit, couple more spots. They might even get themselves in a potentially decent position to benefit from the reverse grid for race 2.
With this little pack of cars from 6th to 8th place all fighting together, I think there's a really good chance they could start recovering through, with Andy Steele there in the middle in his car. It's yeah, I mean, as with all these things, it's about consistency, and they will get back hopefully to, say, this top 10 position in the first race, and would then be looking to get back through further up higher up the order for race 2, because obviously championship points are on offer for this weekend, and therefore every single place counts.
Yeah, particularly as you say, championship points on the line. Absolutely agree. It's absolutely vital that these guys score every single point that they can, because it's all going to matter towards the end of the season. The season one, it was simply just the bragging rights that whoever could come away with the race victory. Whereas this time, there is something on offer now, and it is a championship title. Now, I think there was a brief change of positions between Zaruta and Cherny, because I did see that Zaruta got back past on the timing screen. I think as we were talking about Rowe and Rossetti just back then. So Cherny certainly putting the pressure on Zaruta as they come over Clay Hill, underneath the canopy of the trees, and up towards the right-hander at Druid's corner, and Cherny's really applying the pressure here. He might try and loosen up Zaruta on the exit again to put himself alongside, but Zaruta senses that's coming and tries to put the car back to the middle of the road, and again he's squeezing Cherny towards the edge of the circuit. He forces the Czech driver to go the long way round into Lodge Corner. Cherny tries for the undercut, but he finds Zaruta's car firmly parked on the apex. Now they crest the rise with less than 5 minutes to go over Deer Leap. Now Cherny thinks, right, you're going to play that tactic. I'm going to go down the outside this time. Side by side into the right-hander at Old Hall. Will he go around the outside? He's done it before, Cherny. He's not afraid to go around the outside and make a pass. So far, Zaruta being as stubborn as ever. As we see just in the background there, Skillicorn, Fernerhuff and Shepherd using all the track and a bit more. Down into Cascades, and again, Cherny just looking for that undercut on the exit of the left-hander and back out through Lakeside. And Cherny has put himself alongside it. There's a great exit from Cascades, and there's almost a bang of wheels, and through into third place has gone Cherny momentarily. Meanwhile, for the lead, here comes Mcmaster down the outside of Murphy. But he's going to try and size him up for a move, possibly in a couple of corners' time. So wherever you look at the moment, Chris, for first, for third, and indeed for fifth downwards, there are battles all over the shop. So it shows that whoever you're racing against at the front, in the mid-pack, or towards the rear, you've always got someone to compete against, whatever your skill level in this championship, whatever group you get into.
And up front, it's very much 2x2, isn't it? These have been some epic battles to watch. I think maybe Mcmaster was happy to sit behind Murphy for the first part of the race, but as we're coming down to the absolute, the pointy end of this race, 3 minutes 42 to go currently. Oh, as Zaruta loses the brakes he's going to have a gap now to make up, but Cherny also loses it under the rear, under the exit. Really pushing hard, both these drivers, as they're coming down towards the end of the race. Yeah, so it looks like this battle, you can see how the battle behind has caught up just from all those mistakes. But certainly out at the front, it looks like Mcmaster is no longer happy to sit behind Murphy and wants to drive things forward now.
He wants to try and hold a perfect 100% record of wins. If he can do that here and then win the second race, there's every chance that he could potentially take a clean sweep from Oulton Park of all 4 race wins, but he needs to get around the black and orange Caterham of James Murphy first to do that. There's only a fraction over 3 minutes to go here, which means only really 2 more laps left in this race. It's about 2 minutes for a lap time, so this will be the penultimate lap, and Mcmaster feels he can go down the outside into Old Wall Corner, and you can pass around the outside if you get the line and the speed right. Not quite on that occasion for Mcmaster, as Murphy uses all of his guile and experience from racing Caterhams in real life. But of course, Mcmaster has exactly the same, having won titles himself before. So great to see 2 real-life Caterham champions transferring all of their skills into racing this esports version of the Caterham Academy machine. On board with Steve Mcmaster, going to pick up another gear, and now towards Island Bend. Not quite sure you go one-handed through Island Bend in the Academy car in real life. That'd be quite a daring thing to do. But I'm sure, and that would just be his avatar in the car. On the wheel in his sim, he would have both hands firmly on the wheel to get that done. He's trying to get the move done here as he just loosened up Murphy a little bit on corner exit as he tries to get the power down. Murphy is being quite stubborn here as he needs to be to hold on to the place, and thankfully they're not losing too much time with the cars behind. It does look as though for third that Cherney has managed to maintain, if not extend, the gap that he managed to pick up when the 2 almost missed their braking points here at the Hislop chicane, which the leaders are coming to. The gap is 1.4 seconds at the moment between Cherney and Giruta, and unless something happens, touch wood to Cherney in third place. I can't see that changing. And this is the scrap that's been going on for 6th, 7th and 8th. So Fernhoff's got himself into the top 5. Skillicorn's down to 6th, and we've then got McConaughey, and then David Rowe and Will Rossetti have both got past Andy Steele. So from their first lap dramas, Chris, both Rowe and Rossetti are into the top 10, and that will put them effectively mid-pack for their start for the second race when we set the grid on the results of race 1.
I think realistically that's probably as much as they could have hoped for in this race. They've certainly maximised what they've put in. This 6th, 7th and 8th still has a potential that they could close that gap, because they have been sort of having that battle. Unfortunately, they're just a little bit spread out to give us the same battles that we've been seeing up front. But let me head back to up front, because James Murphy has actually pulled a little bit of a gap here, which is going to be a nice little safety margin going into that final lap.
Yeah, looking at the lap times, that's absolutely right. The lap time last time by for James Murphy going on to the final lap was a 2 minutes 0.3. You compare that to Mcmaster on a 2 minutes 0.9. So I think a small mistake or a small mishap there from Mcmaster seems to have allowed Murphy to build a small cushion, and the gap, as you say, is 7/10, and it'll have to be a mega last lap here, and possibly relying on a mistake from Murphy, if at all it happens, to win this race and make it 3 from 3 so far. But at the moment, Murphy has it under control. As we know, it's not done until he gets the checkered flag and crosses the line, so not counting him as the winner just yet. He's still got a way to go then. There's about roughly halfway of a lap still left to run. Leaders then up towards Britain's for the last time. Flicks left and then right through the chicane, and then up the hill, over Hilltop and down towards Hislops, the second chicane, and then Knickerbrook that will take them towards the last few corners and back towards the pits. Under brakes.
This gap is looking pretty safe at the moment, isn't it? But it does only take one mistake, and they're pushing so hard that mistake is easily possible. So this race is definitely not done, but I think it's advantage Murphy right now.
And it will be a win, I'm sure, that will be very satisfying, given the fact that we talked about it before the race started, the fact that James is someone who's been a little bit over-enthusiastic in both the Academy and 420R cars, and tended to get himself into good positions and either just take a little bit too much out of the tyres or overheat them or make a mistake. But he's going to come out under the bridge with Mcmaster in tow, who will try and close in. He tries to put himself into the mirrors, but it's not quite going to work. And after quite a few races of trying in Season 1, James Murphy is about to kick off his Academy season in Season 2 for the championship in the best possible fashion. Up to the checkered flag. It's the best possible start for James Murphy. Finally, he picks up a victory in the caterhamracer.com Academy Series, and the fact he's weaving from side to side, you can see exactly what that means. He is delighted. Mcmaster picks up second. Jaroslav Cherney, a well-deserved third place, ahead of Christian Zaruta. Then it's Paul Fernhoff in fifth, Chris Skillicorn in sixth, and Matt Shepherd and Blair McConaughey, and then David Rowe in ninth place. And then in 10th place, Guy Crawford, after his spin, he pips Will Rossetti to the final top 10 spot. So a great recovery from Guy Crawford to displace Will Rossetti and kind of put a bit of a thorn into the side of his recovery drive, but still 11th place is fairly respectable, but he will start mid-pack. Then it's Andy Steele and Andrew Parker, Steve Arnell, and then the last driver who will finish the race will be Rob Oldland. And we lost Richard Gallagher in the pit laners. There's Rob in the background, just trundling over the line to pick up the final finishing spot. So, confirmation of race number 1, and it is James Murphy who picks up the victory and takes the first points of the season as he heads the table with Steve Mcmaster in second place and Jaroslav Cherny rounding out the podium. Then Christian Zaruta in third, Paul Fernhoff in fifth position. Zaruta in fourth, then Fernhoff fifth, then Chris Skillicorn in sixth, Matt Shepherd seventh, Blair McConaughey eighth, David Rowe recovers after his turn 1 spin to get to ninth, and Guy Crawford, also on the recovery trail, climbs to 10th after his incident with Richard Gallagher. Then we have Will Rossetti, then Andy Steele, Andrew Parker, then Steve Arnell and Rob Oldland. And Richard Gallagher was in the race but pitted halfway through, and that concludes the 16 cars that started and finished or did not finish the race. So, moving on to race number 2, and I think, as I mentioned, Chris, I think that's probably been a long time coming for James Murphy. He's had quite a few races where he's been potentially in a position to make a race victory and been close. He's made a couple of mistakes, so he's been close in the mix and scored second a few times. I think that will feel pretty satisfying for James to pick up the win on the first race of the season, and that will certainly kick off any championship chances he might have for the esports side of Caterham Racing this season. With a win like that, that will certainly give him a ton of confidence.
You betcha he will be happy with that one, very much so. He's had a, just like in real life, he's had some quite bad luck. He had that collision with Will Rossetti in the 420s, which took him out of contention for that. So what a better way to bounce back than with a victory over Steve Mcmaster. And that was relentless pressure at the front there from Steve Mcmaster, but equally the battle for third and fourth in that race between Cherny and Zaruta. I know Cherny had sort of a contact at the first corner which caused some shenanigans, but certainly that battle was worth watching, wasn't it?
Definitely was, and you have to see if you can try and replicate that for today for the second race, and we'll see what he can do when the race gets underway very, very shortly. Steve Mcmaster, again, wasn't quite the perfect record. He does get a second place, but even so, I think overall in both championships, he's been arguably the standout driver. The fact he picked up 2 race victories and now has kicked off the Academy with a second place, you have to argue he's very much the informed driver across the board in both series.
I would certainly swap positions with him right now, yeah. So 2 wins and a second place is hardly anything to be sniffed at. So yeah, I would agree actually. And even in that race, it was very well controlled, and it was, he didn't go for the rash move. He worked out what he wanted to do and made it happen. So yeah, I think second place is definitely a good championship starting position for this new season.
And of course, looking into third place, it was that fantastic, almost race-long battle between Christian Zaruta and Jaroslav Cherny. And it's Cherny who picks up the position, the final spot on the podium, but it certainly has shown the determination that both drivers have, particularly Zaruta, trying to hold on to a potential position. I think he could be a good bet to pick up a podium this time, but again, it just counts on him and everyone else possibly staying out of trouble. So the cars, of course, all formed up on the grid. As we mentioned, Race 2 effectively sees the grid formed as a direct result from race number 1. So wherever you finished in race 1 is where you start for race 2. And that ultimately gives us exactly the same front row that we had for race number 1, with Murphy on pole position and then Steve Mcmaster alongside. And this time now it's Jaroslav Cherny starting in third place. Christian Zaruta is back on the second row, but on the opposite side, on the outside line, starting in fourth place in his white, black and yellow Caterham. And also watch out for Paul Fernhoff back in fifth position with a high starting spot. And also, you need to keep an eye on both Will Rossetti and David Rowe. They are the 5th and 6th cars on the left-hand side in line. David Rowe, the black car with the green roll bar, and it's the golf-coloured blue and orange car of Will Rossetti, who starts back in 11th spot on the grid on row 6. So 16 cars for another 15 minutes of racing here at the Oulton Park International Circuit. A bit of an esports prelude to what we'll be seeing on Saturday when the real-life Academy drivers take their first plunge into racing in real life. But we're esports racing tonight at Oulton Park. Race number 2 is about to get underway. The revs are rising, the flames are spitting from the exhausts, and we're all set for the red lights to come on one by one atop the gantry when they go out. Race number 2 will be underway any second now. The lights go out, they drop the clutch, and away they go. Good, decent start from everyone in front. Looks to be fairly clean down towards turn 1, but we'll wait for them to get through turn 1 first. Cherny has taken second place immediately for Steve Mcmaster. Now, can they all get through Oldhall this time safely? A couple of cars are on wide, but I think the answer is yes, just about. So let's hold our breath for Cascades as Murphy leads the charge in, and oops, not quite, because Steve Mcmaster gets a tag from Christian Zaruta. Into the gravel goes the double race winner from the 420Rs. And now it's his turn to charge through the field now with only 14 and a half minutes to go. As immediately I saw Jaroslav Cherny was instantly putting Murphy under pressure for the lead. It looks like he's backed off as he heads into Ireland Bend. So Murphy leads the way from Cherny. Then Zaruta and David Rose getting sideways. He's already up to 5th place, starting 9th. So a cracking start from the DPR boss. He's up 4 places in a matter of corners. And now he's really starting to push his way up through the order now as Skillicorn's up to 4th. And he's got Rowe on his tail this time by. Shepherd 6th. Then it's Fernahuff 7th, McConaughey, Crawford, and Roy Rossetti, who's only made up 1 spot from his starting place in 10th. And as for Steve Mcmaster, Chris, he's down to 14th place after his trip through the gravel, but he's fairly close with the pack, so it might not be completely over. He's got, I think, not to be disingenuous, 13 mobile chicanes to get through to try and get himself back up towards the front of the field.
I would say they're pretty fast mobile chicanes, Scott. I wouldn't go. We've had more contact there. So David Rowe has gone. Chris Skillicorn I can see spinning the pack, and in the background Matt Shepherd and even Blair McConaughey on the right. So certainly something's gone very wrong through Hislop chicane on lap 2.
It looked to me as if they almost all did it themselves out of sympathy for each other. So they all kind of spun off and lost it a little bit without making contact with anyone else. I know Zaruta kind of went through it. They're all getting into it. That's Mcmaster off again in the background. He's made contact with somebody. I think it might have been, I'm not sure, maybe it might have been Rob Oldland or somebody else in the background, but they're all together. And at the moment, it seems as though that Murphy and Cherny are in a race of their own. This is the scrap for 3rd place, and it's Blair McConaughey who's come up to 3rd place. So this mighty skirmish all the way through the first lap has really shaken up the order. McConaughey is the man that's in the final podium place. Paul Fernahuff has maintained a place and up to 4th. Chris Skillicorn 5th, Rossetti 6th. Oh, and that was Guy Crawford and I think Andrew Parker getting Andy Steele and Andrew Parker side by side. And I hate to be disingenuous, but still, we almost just drove straight inside of Parker. I'm not sure what was going on there. Yeah,
it did look like that, didn't it? I think there's a lot of confusion going on at the moment as far as, there's a lot of cars being in a lot of places on different parts of the track, and they're closer than they were on the grid at the moment, so they're just trying to work it all out. There's certainly some aggression going on there, which actually, in real life, as in the sim world, it will cause you problems, and we've definitely seen problems being caused for everyone down the field.
I think hopefully they can take this second lap to just cool their jets a little bit and try and sort themselves out into more of a distinguished order as they come up through shell oars for the second time. So McConaughey holds 3rd then, Skillicorn's up to 4th, Fernahuff's back down to 5th where he started, and then Rossetti in 6th. He's now ahead of David Rowe this time after he had his excursion up at the Knickerbrook chicane. 7th place for Crawford, 8th for Andy Steele, 9th for Christian Zaruta after his spin. And it's Andrew Parker 10th, David Rowe is trying to climb back up to 11th, Steve Mcmaster is 12th, and it's Shepherd, Gallagher, Arnell and Oldland. So that's holding on for this point in time, as now we see McConaughey's got past, well, he was trying to be passed by Skillicorn, he just momentarily got in front. Skillicorn gets back through and Fernahuff dives up the inside as he tries to make a move, and he makes contact with Skillicorn. Oh, around goes Skillicorn, onto the grass goes Fernahuff, they all go streaming through, and back onto the road goes Fernahuff. Looks, I think in the background, Skillicorn managed to avoid getting collected by anyone else, and he's dropped back down to 15th position. And they're still at it for 4th place now, because we see Rossetti under threat from Steele. Here goes Giroux to make up another place as he dives up the inside of Crawford. Getting loose is Andy Steele. Past goes Crawford and past goes Rowe. And I think after these 2-3 laps, they're still trying to sort each other out, but I think one or two drivers are possibly getting a little bit frustrated out there, Chris.
Yeah, it looked like a bit of an over-optimistic move by Fernahuff there. Sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. You're going to cost yourself much more time by having contact, and he wasn't. Between the chicane and Knickerbrook is not an ideal overtaking possibility. It can happen, but it involves both drivers cooperating, and doesn't seem to be the high on people's list right now.
Well, certainly I'd give them A for effort in terms of trying to make moves, and that was a good effort there from David Rowe as he tried to slip up the inside of Old Wall Corner, which is definitely a passing spot if you get it right, but just running wide on the exit allowed Crawford to move back through into what is now currently 6th position, but Roche will line him up again. He darts to the inside on the run towards Ireland Bend. He'll be able to slide through. He's got a bit better pace. Crawford just about capitulates and lets him through. And into 6th position goes David Rowe. So at least the top 5 is still possible. So just in front there, Christian Zaruta and Will Rossetti are 5th and 4th respectively. But at the front of the field, just quickly checking in, it's Murphy and Cherny, less than 6 tenths between them. Here they are, and they're almost in the race of their own. In fact, they are, because looking back to third place, Blair McConaughey is some almost 9 seconds back from these two. So that's just popping over the hilltop there in the background. So that's the big gap we've got here. So the leaders are already heading out of Knickerbrook, whereas the third place battle hasn't even got to Hislops just yet. But Murphy then looking for the double, but instead of the pale blue and red Caterham behind in his mirrors, he now has a pure red Caterham. And now it's the Red Baron himself, Jaroslav Cherny from the Czech Republic, holding on to second place and hounding the back of Murphy here. And he was able to put Zaruta under pressure for quite the most of the race and managed to make him crack at one point to pick up third place. He's now looking for the win, and I think Cherny's quite good at this, being able to just sit on the rear bumper or sit underneath the rear end of the car in front of him, just keep on applying the pressure, just forcing the car in front to absorb it until they can't take any more, and it forces a mistake for him to get through. And he might get an opportunity here, Chris, down towards Old Hall Corner.
Yeah, I think, again, you've got so much space behind them. I was going to say that they're probably both giggling in their little virtual helmets, but I think actually now the business has started. Cherny's decided that he is going to start putting pressure on, and we have seen that he is relentless. He will sit on, a millimetre off your bumper and just wait until something an opportunity arises. He's got his lights fully ablaze as well, sort of trying to distract Murphy. Murphy is having the same thing again. He's had a whole race of practice defending, and it looks like it's going to have to happen again for the next 8 minutes. It's a lot of effort to try and defend that.
And this is supposed to be a new and improved James Murphy, who doesn't get as excitable as he did before. So he was able to prove that was the case in race 1. As you say, he's got to do it all over again for race number 2. So we'll keep tabs on that. I know there's been a change just behind in the further positions in 4th and 5th places, because Will Rossetti's dropped back to 6th now because he's been passed by both David Rowe and Christian Zaruta. So actually Rowe's passed both of them, in fact. So he's passed both Rossetti and then Zaruta in quick succession, and he's leaving Guy Crawford to deal with them. And Rowe's next target is possibly going to be 3rd, so he's going to start chasing up the road after Blair McConaughey for that 3rd position. And they're just in the background there, Rossetti weaving all over the curbs as he tries to put the power down. And he's eventually possibly going to get passed by Guy Crawford, I think. In fact, Crawford is looking up the inside. Does he dare make a dive into Hislops? They both hit the brakes at the same time. Crawford's got track position on the inside line, but looks as though Rossetti's confident enough to hold on to the outside line for the moment. But indeed, Crawford's showing some brilliant race cars, at least in the esports world, up to 6th position, clouts the curb a little bit as he exits Knickerbrook. But I have to say, I think we should stick him with a real Caterham at this rate, Chris, because his virtual skills, if they're anything to go by, his racecraft, as you alluded to earlier on, is very good indeed.
Absolutely. I think that's the same for a lot of esport racers. Many would love to be out in real cars racing, but sometimes a budget doesn't allow, and esports is a great way of showing what's possible, and maybe one day actually taking that plunge and spending the money to do it. But equally, you do get all the kicks and none of the expense in esports. So, you don't have that painful rebuild that you have to do if you have an accident. So really good to see him out here and showing what he's capable of.
I think whilst we're looking at that, we need to look back at the battle of the lead, because when they came across the line last time by looking at the timing screen, there was less than 1/10 of a second between Murphy and Cherny, and we weren't kidding about Cherny's relentless hounding on the rear end of a rival, because he's certainly doing it once again. He's right underneath the roll cage of Murphy, almost practically pushing him into the braking zone into Island Bend. Cherny wants this victory. He has won at Oulton Park before. He wants to do it again if he can to try and add another victory, but of course he knows this time it means a lot more than just a race win. It means championship points to go with it as well. He picked up a 3rd in that first race. He'll go 1 place better if he can hold on to where he is now, but if he can get the win, it'll be 2 places better, and certainly almost a maximum score to take away from it. Over Hilltop, this is Cherny's view. We'll grab another gear. Still the slipstream here, just as they run down towards Hislops, a small toe. Unless he gets a real slingshot away from Britons, he's not going to really pull alongside yet. And Murphy a little wiggly over the curbs there, and it might possibly give Cherny the opportunity he may need. He's tried to prize out of the hat several times now in this race to maybe get through. He's only got 5.5 minutes to go here, so we've gone through practically 2/3 of the race. And they've got a 10.5 second cushion to Blair McConaughey behind them. So in terms of the battle for effectively at least 2nd place, 2nd probably the best they're going to hope for. 3rd shouldn't be a problem, and here comes Cherny with a good exit from Druid's Corner towards Lodge. They are practically side by side, dead level into the braking zone at the right-hander. Murphy has the right-hander track position, but Cherny cares not for that. He'll try and go around the outside if he can, but again, Murphy shows him the door. and the rear of his roll cage and holds on.
We've seen a couple of times there on the onboard footage, Cherney has got a run on James a number of times, but has chosen to not use it. So he is currently still waiting and patient, even though it doesn't look like it necessarily from these shots. He is actually being patient. He's not forcing the issue right now, but you can bet that when we get down to that last lap or the last 2 minutes, some more of those issues will be pushed, and let's hope that we have some good racing towards the end of this race.
Can't disagree. I think we've got now 3 laps to go, because when they crossed the line, it was about 4.5, 5 minutes to go, I think. So they're probably going to have, this, including this one, 3 more times around to decide who wins this. And again, so you just saw there that in terms of lap time, very similar. There's only about 0.02 of a second that separates them in lap time. So whether that's Murphy forcing Cherney to go at his pace, or Cherney is possibly only running at the pace that Murphy can manage, and he's swarming all over the back of the 2-time Caterham champion. And of course, Cherney being so strong, of course, as we said before, he is the man that effectively developed the physics for these Caterhams and mod cars in the first place, so he knows these cars in terms of how they handle in the sim practically like the back of his hand, if not better. So he will know every trick in the book to be able to get the maximum out of these cars. But Murphy, of course, as we say, a 2-time Caterham champion, once in Academy, then in road sport in consecutive seasons. He was also a race winner last year in 270Rs. And he is certainly someone who is no stranger to Caterham competition, and he will definitely be giving everything that he's got, but he's going to have to try and get his elbows out again, as here comes Cherney to the outside. Now, will he dare go around the outside into Druids? He might go for it, unless he goes for the undercut, but he has got a great exit from this right-hander on the last lap that he managed. They go under the bridge, and again, Murphy's not safe. He has to go to the inside line to defend, and you can go around the outside if you're confident enough with the grip and the advantage that you've got into Lodge. And Cherney again will look for the undercut, but he can't quite grab it. They're going to come on to the second to last lap now. Once again, nose to tail. We'll have a quick check of lap time as they come across the line. And lap time in terms of their comparison is practically about 1/10 of a second, not less. And Murphy again, for the 3rd time in as many corners, has to go to the inside line to defend it. And Cherney's got a great one off the Vauxhall corner. They always touch wheels, but they do make contact. A little wiggle there for Murphy, and Cherney will get himself alongside if he can. But Murphy shuts the door into Cascades, and that seems possibly Cherney just trying to rattle James Murphy here. But unlike in previous times, he's staying firm, Chris, and he's not letting Charoslav go without a fight.
Reading this race, I am seeing more mistakes happening from James. Cherney's able to position that car wherever he wants and become a nuisance to James. And we're just seeing that he's looking up the inside of Shell Oils there. He's on the grass. Can he make it stop? He can. James gave him some room to make his mistake. But yeah, looking at it, James is making more mistakes. So consider his cage rattled at the moment, but can he sustain it? Can he put up with this pressure for another lap?
Certainly giving it a red hot go as they come up through Britain's for the second to last time. Less than 2 minutes to go, so we are on the second to last lap. Before we must forget about them as we keep on watching this one, Blair McConaughey is in 3rd place. Here's the scrap for 4th because David Rowe is with Christian Zaruta, but the pair of them are catching. In fact, they have even caught Blair McConaughey, so these two could even find themselves in 3rd and 4th positions respectively. In which order they'll be, we'll have to wait and see, but they could both make it past Blair McConaughey in quick succession if they work hard enough on this point. Paul Fernerhuff is 6th, then Will Rossetti's back in 7th, followed by Crawford, Gallagher and Steele, and then Arnell, Skillicorn, Shepherd, Mcmaster, Parker and Oldland. So all 16 cars are still running at the moment. And this is the continuing scrap for 3rd here. So I'm sure DPR would love to get 2 cars on the podium, if not just 1. And they would love it to be him, as Zaruta just throws the car into the corner at Druids, runs over the curb on the exit and continues to hound effectively his team boss, because I know that Christian's been a DPR driver in the past. They now come out of Lodge and over the crest now to start the last lap, which the top team are doing right now.
They have caught up with McConaughey like nothing, haven't they? They've eaten up that gap. So it does look like in this last lap we're going to obviously have to go back to the lead battle, but I wouldn't be surprised to see David in front of McConaughey by the end of this lap.
Well, we'll keep tabs on that to see if the position changes, but back towards the front it may very well change, because Cherney is throwing everything he's got at James Murphy, and still Murphy will not capitulate and let him through. But then why should he? He's in the lead of the race. He's trying to go for a double victory here, but he's resisting the pressure so well. Unless Cherney can find a way around the outside or try and undercut him on the exit. He's got the outside line, gets his nose in front. Can he beat into the braking zone? Murphy goes back up the inside and makes a dive. They make contact, and round goes Murphy. Oh dear, I thought he had it all under control, and unfortunately Cherney just put him under a lot of pressure, one time too many. And unfortunately, Cherney has snatched the victory from Murphy on the last lap. So it looked to me like I'm rather speculate. It looked to me like a race incident, but I'll say no more. But apart from that, this is the closest battle now. Rowe has got past McConaughey, and so has, well, Zaruta hasn't, but Rowe has. So up into third place has gone David, and now it's Christian's view, and here he is. He's pushing the back of Blessing. Come on, get on with it. I want to get fourth place. And so he lost a bit of time there, lost a couple of car lengths as he got held up on the exit because they didn't quite get the power down quick enough. And Christian can't make a dive into Hislop, so he'll try again, possibly into Lodge, if not Deer Leap. Sorry, a Druids if not Lodge. Deer Leap is the final run up towards the checkered flag, unless he gets a good exit. But he's running out of opportunities here. He might get a fourth place if he can try and squeeze through, but McConaughey definitely won't make it easy. He may be lining him up here. Will he go to the inside line into Druids? He thought about it, put himself into McConaughey's mirrors, but it wasn't quite going to work, so we'll keep tabs on that for a second. But out the final couple of corners, he kept on hounding him, he kept on applying the pressure, and finally it paid off. Up to the checkered flag, it is the Czech Republic's Jaroslav Cherny. He will pick up the second victory of the night tonight, his first of the season, and a win in the Academy class. James Murphy, it's still first and second. I think he'll lead the championship exiting Oulton Park. And for third place, it'll be Rowe. For fourth, it would just be Blair McConaughey, who just holds off Christian Zaruta at the flag. And then sixth place, in a bit of no man's land, really all on his own, is Paul Fernaf, but a solid drive for him nonetheless. For seventh, it's a group between Rossetti, Gallagher and Crawford, and across the line they go. And they finish in that order. Gallagher just ahead of Crawford. Next is then Matt Shepherd, Mcmaster and Skillercorn side by side. And Mcmaster gets 11th place from Skillercorn on the line. Then it's Parker, then Andy Steele, Steve Arnell. And the last driver across the line will be Rob Oldland. Here he is. Across the line he goes. And that'll be some extra virtual track time ahead of his Academy debut on Saturday. So, results of race number 2, entertaining as ever, and boy did it produce a fantastic race victor in the end. Jaroslav Cherny with the fastest lap of the race, and he picks up the maximum score for race number 2. It's James Murphy, second place. He led for so long, but ultimately just cracked the pressure that Cherny was relentlessly applying. It's still second place, and Murphy should still lead the points heading to the next rounds at Caterham Park in a few weeks' time. Then David Rowe in third, fourth place for Blair McConaughey, fifth place for Christian Zaruta, sixth for Paul Fernaf, then Will Rossetti in seventh place. Richard Gallagher picks up eighth, just ahead of Guy Crawford, and then Matt Shepherd rounds out the top 10 for race number 2. Mcmaster just beats Skillercorn, so we're line to pick up 11th. Skillercorn therefore takes 12th, but it's Andrew Parker, Andy Steele, Steve Arnell and Rob Oldland who picks up the final finishing spot. He will be suitably prepared, I'm sure, for this weekend on Saturday. So, as ever, Chris, 2 entertaining and I think almost exhausting races back in the Caterham Academy in the caterhamracer.com championships. But I think, and as it was in the 420Rs, another fitting way to kick off the championship. I think it could be another interesting battle. But first and second, it wasn't quite the double for James Murphy. But as we said, he will leave Oulton Park as the points leader. I think he can be satisfied with, I think, a good evening's work well done.
Wow, it was that second race was frantic to say the least, wasn't it? Maybe a bit overly so at times during that race, but considering how frantic it was, there was some really good battles on display, and they kind of lasted to the end. So great recovery drive through from David Rowe. I think that's a standout to, from that first race where he finished obviously very far down. Blair McConaughey, his qualifying position wasn't great, but after all the shenanigans through the races, he's now pulled himself back up there. Definitely Murphy will be happy with that as an evening. It was his mistake going into Shellors. He outbraked himself and actually could have ended up worse, so he did well to just rejoin and only lose that one place. But yeah, overall really, really good race from everyone, really. So yeah, I enjoyed that a lot.
Good stuff. I think it's time for you to dive in, see you can find to have a quick post-race chat with, I'm sure. If any of our 2 winners are available, I'm sure, or anyone else that got involved in some shenanigans, but you're quite good at digging out drivers and having a quick word, so let's see who you can find, and so you can have a chat to get a bit of insight into how they found those 2 very frantic races. So off you go, Chris. Let's see who you can find. I'm
going to try for James Murphy to start with, just because, what an evening and what a return to form. So James, have you got us in the commentary box?
Yeah, hi, good evening, gents.
Hey, so that's a bit better than the 420s, right?
Yeah, definitely. First win feels really good. Epic battle with Steve in the first race. Really enjoyed that. He's so quick and so clean to race against, and he did really proud to have held him off. And the second race, Yaroslav's just once he gets the once he gets in the mood, he's very, very hard to stop. And the best man won their second race. Bit of contact, which was my fault on the hairpin, and luckily Justice sorted it out, and I had the half spin, and he went through because he deserved that second race.
Yeah, and the gap meant that it was protected. But you must be you must have a bit of an adrenaline running for you coursing through your veins at the moment. That was relentless pressure for both those races.
It's incredible how like real life that is. It is, and the pressure, like you say, I don't mind saying I've got a giant fan pointed at me, and I'm still more than a little bit warm. I'm in need of a shower. The pressure in the first race, like you said, actually both races fairly similar in that I could see the gap back to third was enough that we kept line astern for long enough that it was always going to be between the two of us in both races, which afforded afforded some quite defensive driving, particularly in the second race, where I was using a bit of real world racing know-how to make sure I got good exits in the right places and keep it behind, but only for so long.
Great stuff, James. Well done. Long may that continue, and we'll see you on track and on some more virtual stuff soon.
Thanks, gents. It's great to be back in the Academy car.
See you soon. So yeah, great. I'm going to drag someone else in here for a slightly different reason other than the race we just had, but I'm going to see whether Rob Oldland is available. Rob's actually...
excellent.
Hey Rob, have you got us in the commentary box?
Hi, Chris.
Hey Rob. So we just thought we'd drag you in here because we know that you are very, very shortly going to be heading out on track for real at Oulton Park in your very own Academy car, which we can see on screen right now. And we just wondered, first of all, how did tonight's racing go? And secondly, how much are you looking forward to the weekend?
Well, let's hope the race goes a little bit better the weekend than it did tonight, Chris, eh?
Yes. I'd say that, yeah, you did trot in. I mean, the pace is relentless online, right?
It is, so first of all, it's just an honour to be racing with the quality of the racing is just so high, Chris. So, when I'm finishing 13 seconds behind Mcmaster, I don't like celebrating mediocrity, but what this is about is a bit of progression. And for me, Caterham Racer has just really allowed me to learn the circuit. So the first time I've ever going to have been to Oulton Park circuit will be on Friday. So, thank you for putting this. It's the best practice I'll be able to get, Chris.
So we will be, there will be live streaming from Oulton Park, and Scott, I believe you're going to be commentating there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It should be good for that live stream, and it'll be good to see how Rob and the rest of the Academy guys in both groups get on. So all I can say is, Rob, it's great to have you part of the championships, and very best of luck, and we'll see you get on.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Scott. Cheers, Chris. Thanks for a great evening.
Great stuff.
Excellent. So there we go. One very happy race winner and one very happy upcoming Academy driver who's going to be racing for real life this weekend. So to wrap up tonight's action, again, winners it never relentless in the Caterham Academy in the caterhamracer.com championships. And I think tonight, again, like it was in the 420 hours, was effectively, I think, bar one or two little skirmishes, a fantastic way to kick off the championship. And of course, going forward now, there are points on the line. We now, of course, move on to Cadwell Park for the next instalments of both the 420R and the Academy Championships. But as we talked about, we have got some real-life racing to get back to once again. Here's just a quick reminder of where we are coming up. So the next round, of course, is going to be on the 21st. So yeah, it's actually next week, next Tuesday, where the 420R cars are back in action on Cadwell Park. You know what? I can't actually wait to see in real life Caterham's twisting around Cadwell Park. I haven't ever seen it before, but if I can get to Cadwell Park, I definitely will, and I'll definitely get a preview when the 420Rs head out next Tuesday and the Tuesday after that, just before they head out for real. In fact, both champions head out for real on the 28th as well. And Cadwell, I think, is going to be quite a unique test, being so tight and twisty. I think overtaking opportunities, I think it's not an understatement. I think it's probably an understatement when I say they're going to be at a premium all weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see them try it as well. It's again, it's a track with a reputation. I've not actually driven. It's one of the few tracks I haven't driven, but I'd love to one day. Maybe on a track day rather than in a race, though. It's not the widest of tracks, but I have seen Caterham's race there, and they again always give epic racing. So yeah, can't wait to see what it's like online. And then after the 28th, on the weekend following the 28th, we will be seeing them for real going around there.
Brilliant stuff. So that pretty much concludes the action for tonight here at Oulton Park. We leave Oulton Park virtually, and of course we now make the march to the real Oulton Park. As we say, if you want to catch the Academy in person, I do believe tickets are available. Of course, I believe they're only available online because they're not selling physical tickets for obvious reasons with the current global situation. So therefore, if you go to msv.com and even to oultonpark.co.uk, one of the two, and pick up the tickets, I think you should still have some time to pick up ones if you can. And then, of course, the action will be heading out for real. Of course, if you can make it. If not, as we mentioned, the action is going to be live streamed at the very least on the BRSUC pages on YouTube and on Facebook. I believe it is also going to be through the Caterham Cars Limited Facebook page as well. So if you're any Academy drivers or any family of Academy drivers, or if you know anyone who's competing in either one, if you want to watch the action, you can't make it to Oulton Park, you've got the option to watch it from the comfort of your own home. And of course, to make it even more familiar, you will have yours truly on commentary for both of those races. For the rest of the weekend's action, it will be Andy McEwen, who's no stranger to Caterham commentary himself, having done some of the TV stuff. But I'm looking forward to the first sort of non-circuit commentary for Caterham. It should be very fun and should be good stuff to watch. So, Chris, final thoughts for tonight. Some great racing, and I'm sure it sets us up nicely, just not for the rest of the virtual championship, but for finally getting back on track for real.
Yeah, I believe there will be a lot of tidy up to do after this. I think there's going to be a few drivers with a few axes to grind, but we will wait and see. I'll feedback that later. So everyone feels sorry for me in trying to keep everyone in a line. But nevertheless, even through all of that, we still had some really epic battles. So it's always good, and I can't wait for the next one.
And neither can I. So from myself, Scott Woodwiss, Chris Hutchinson, and all of us here at the virtual Oulton Park, if you're heading to Oulton Park for real, hopefully we'll see you at some point around the circuit. If not, we'll see you on the live stream, and we'll see you for more action next week when the virtual 420R Championship for caterhamracer.com heads to Cadwell Park in Lincolnshire virtually for their second meeting. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy the racing this weekend for the Academy, and we'll see you next time for more caterhamracer.com action next week. The caterhamracer.com Academy Championship is sponsored by Just Add Lightness, LED lights for the Caterham 7.